we've heard constantly, or heard constantly during the campaign, that Donald Trump would enact policies to remove potentially millions of people from the US. Some people have said, well, it's fine. He'll say that during the campaign, but the approach will be softer once he gets into office. And the reality of just how difficult something like this is dawns on him. Tom Homan's appointment is a very clear sign that there appears to be very little intention to water this policy down, to dilute it, and actually to go full steam ahead with what Donald Trump's been talking about over the last few weeks and months.
Donald Trump's getting busy putting together his cabinet and senior appointments ahead of coming into power in January of next year. Just in the last 24 hours, he's given the role of, the charge of the border, key area, to Tom Homan. And the New York Congresswoman, Elise Stefanik, has been appointed US ambassador to the UN. On the line now, Alistair Dawber, Washington correspondent for The Times. Hello to you, Alistair.
Hi, John.
Hi. Before we come to the appointments process, Alistair, what's going on with the election, which is still, as it were, being calculated? Are we heading for a clean sweep for the Republicans in Congress?
It looks as though we are. There's still a few straggler seats, districts to report back. The Republicans at the last count, I was looking at this earlier on, need 4 more seats to get to the magic 218 figure that would give them a majority in the House, maintain their majority in the House. We already know that they're going to have at least 52 seats in the Senate, which will give them a majority. The Senate has 100 seats, and obviously Donald Trump has won the White House as well. So not only is that a clean sweep of the major federal institutions for the Republicans, it also really helps, I think, Donald Trump get some of his agenda through. He'll get a lot less sort of resistance in Congress for some of his even more controversial measures now.
So much easier to get his plans through, including those really, really controversial ones. And also, if you've got the House of Representatives, Alistair, well, you can start impeachment proceedings if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that there've been investigations in the House into Joe Biden, into Hunter Biden, into various others, and they've sort of fallen off a cliff a little bit when they get to the Senate. But we might see Donald Trump going after his political opponents. In fairness, we've not heard too much of that in the last few days. There's some speculation, at least, that over the last 4 years, this has been part of driving home his agenda, driving home this idea that the 2020 election was stolen. But of course, now that's an argument that's kind of disappeared. They don't have to argue that anymore. They're back in power, and come January, as you said, it looks like they're going to have the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Yeah, well, I was in the state of Pennsylvania just a few days ago, ahead of the counting of the votes. There was Donald Trump and other Republicans saying that Pennsylvania was riven with cheating. Well, Pennsylvania went to the Republicans, and now suddenly the talk of cheating just went away. Let's talk about appointments, shall we? Tom Homan in charge of borders and deportations. And Tom Homan, Alistair, is pretty hawkish on this stuff, isn't he? Looking at deporting, 11 million migrants have been part of the conversation, and they're talking about starting with well over 1 million men, women and children who've already been refused the right to stay.
Yep, that's exactly what Tom Homan's job is. It's a job he held temporarily under Trump in the last administration. He I don't think you can really see much difference between his approach to the job and what Donald Trump has been talking about for the last few months, last few years. Any idea, I think, that Trump would water down, dilute some of his proposals on the border, I think have disappeared a bit with Tom Homan's appointment. He is a border hawk. He has spoken at length about deporting lots of illegal migrants, as Donald Trump has done. I think that's going to be one of the first things we see Donald Trump try and legislate for in January when he becomes president.
Yeah, but even rounding up and deporting, the first million, to put it that way, of migrants you want to kick out of the country, that's really quite an operation, isn't it? And where do they go, Alistair? Where are they deported to? The destination countries, are they okay with this return?
I doubt very much. I mean, there's one thing Donald Trump will also implement is a remain in Mexico policy. So anyone caught on the border will be deported from where they came, which in the vast majority of cases is Mexico. The costs associated with this policy of Trump's could run into the hundreds of billions of dollars, rounding people up, going through the legal process that's needed, and then the deportation process itself. There are concerns, I think, certainly in Mexico about how this is going to play out, and what Trump is actually going to do. I mean, he's talking about, as you said there, deporting possibly up to 11 million migrants. Of course, there's concerns on the American side of the board as well. A lot of these people come in and, yes, they're not working legally, but they contribute considerably to the economy.
Yes.
And a lot of people who employ farm workers and other such jobs are really quite concerned about how these jobs are going to be sustained, how these industries are going to be sustained.
We anticipate now then a pushback against this policy, maybe from some of the states, especially Democratic states, and in the courts. And Tom Homan, the new man in charge, he's hawkish, as I say, talking about, well, children, adults, it's all the same thing, including children who, under current law would have a right to grow up and work in the USA.
Yeah, and then when the children are born here at present, they have a right to US citizenship, and which is something else that Donald Trump wants to overturn. We've heard constantly during the campaign that Donald Trump would enact policies to remove potentially millions of people from the US. Some people have said, well, it's fine. He'll say that during the campaign, but the approach will be softer once he gets into office. And the reality of just how difficult something like this is dawns on him. Tom Homan's appointment is a very clear sign that there appears to be very little intention to water this policy down, to dilute it, and actually to go full steam ahead with what Donald Trump's been talking about over the last few weeks and months.
Right. Alistair, a quick word on defence and on Russia. Donald Trump has come in saying he wants to end the war in Ukraine against Russia. Now, there were reports in the Washington Post newspaper, on Reuters news agency, about Donald Trump being in contact with Vladimir Putin. That's been denied by the Kremlin. And here, the Defence Secretary John Healey had this to say.
It is in America's interests, it's in NATO's interests, it's in the interest of all countries that believe in the international rules-based order and a stable and secure peace that Putin does not prevail, because if large countries like Russia are able to redraw international boundaries by force, then that sends a signal that undermines the security of all nations. And if reports are right that President Trump has already spoken with President Putin and warned him against the escalation that we see from Russia in Ukraine, this is a very good first step and an early sign.
So that's John Healey, the Defence Secretary in this country, Alistair. Actually, it wouldn't be appropriate, it wouldn't be proper, would it, for Donald Trump to be talking to Putin? Isn't there a law, the Logan Act, that stops a president-elect talking to foreign leaders before they come into office?
Yeah, there are. It's whether Donald Trump gets into trouble for allegedly breaking the terms of the Logan Act, I doubt very much. I mean, Donald Trump is, I think, going to do what Donald Trump wants to do, and don't forget that Donald Trump said that he would end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours of being elected. Now it's almost a week since he was elected, and the war rages on. John Healey, there in that clip, talks about Trump and Putin discussing the escalation of the war. I think he and most of the leaders in Europe, and certainly the administration here in the US at the moment, are concerned not so much about escalation, but the end of the war and what that means, and where the lines of Ukraine's territory are drawn on a map. I think there's a great fear that Donald Trump is going to come into office and effectively cut his losses and award Putin vast swathes of eastern Ukraine, which as we know, would be akin to giving Putin precisely what he wanted by virtue of his invasion.